say thank you, Paul, for reaching out and organizing all this. The story is just inspirational and phenomenal. Just the history of LEAP. It's a program that I've heard about for many of years because I grew up in Richmond. Grew up in Richmond for my elementary years, and then moved to Vallejo, and then I moved back to Richmond. So I am the current poet laureate. So this is definitely going to be interactive. I'm going to do a little bit of poetry, tell you a little bit about my history, and then any questions you might have time for that as well. So roses are red, violets are blue. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you. So most times when people think of poetry, they can think, oh yeah, it can be kind of corny. Poetry can be a little corny. But at the same time, it can be very deep, like the poem that was shared. It can help express emotions. A lot of times, it can take what we think about and how we feel and go deeper. So going back to the analogy of a rose, what is a rose? Is it recognized as a seed or not until it grows into a blossoming ball of life's little passions held together by a thorny envy, threatening to prick anyone who gets closer than an arm's reach. Yet something so rare in nature that we all stop to marvel at its beauty, hoping that one day someone will give one to you or me. One that doesn't wither with time, with all the thorns cut off, except for those few to keep off unwanted hands and unspoken. That's mine. How great is finding that one rose among a humanity of thorns. It's very interesting, like my poetry journey. There's people that have always had a love for writing. Me, I've always had a love of, well, actually, I can't say I've always had a love of reading. Because in school, English was one of my worst subjects. But once I got to college and was able to expand my reading and started reading the books that I like to read, I really picked up the love of reading. And from there, kind of writing kind of blossomed from that because something that I inherited from my dad, who's in the room, was just curiosity about anything and everything, and being able to explore just poetry, how you can tell stories about any and everything. They don't have to be very long; they can be very short, but they'll invoke thought, they'll invoke emotion, and growing up. It's funny being the poet laureate now, whereas, I'm standing in front of a room full of people, all eyes on me. Growing up, I was very shy. Like, I would very much have a hindsight of like, I wish I would have said this. But with poetry, you can write and address things as they come about. And writing has a way of being able to tell stories that sometimes you can't verbalize. And it can go across different mediums. Another really short poem. This one's called Lost Language. I wish I still knew sign language so I could point out all the things I don't know how to say. And that's very indicative of how sometimes we go through life. There's things that we want to express, but we don't know how to say it, or we don't know, or we can write it down, but then once it gets to the verbalization, it's like, I can't tell that story. But it's very interesting how with writing, with metaphors, you can express things that are a little bit harder to express, if that makes sense. So I do have books. So one of the things that helped me get to the poet laureate position is just my connections with the poetry community. So it's one of those things where when I published my first book, I talked to people, poets, but then also just people in the community, and they said, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book, but I've never known where to start." And with the support of my wife, she's like, "You know how to do that. Why don't you help people do that?" And so it helped me to actually start my own publishing company. And that's a funny story. Because I announced my new publishing company February 29th, 2020. 3 weeks later, everything shut down. And but it helped people to be more reflective, because we couldn't go anywhere, so we actually had to sit with ourselves. And in that, it's very interesting how when we're with ourselves, the conversations we have. So I'm actually going to read a poem from my second book, called No Whiskey, No Tears. This one is called The Punchline. And this is one that I wrote based on the fact that sometimes what people see is not what's really going on under the layers. So this one's called Punchline. Another long day is ahead of me. Alone in my room, but not quite time to get ready. Another sleepless night has me brooding in my chair. As I sit here watching my mask continue to stare. Stare at me with that blank look with its painted on smile, taunting me as I contemplate for a while. How did I get here, where I'm currently at? I followed my dream, and my dad's book helped me with that. All I ever wanted to do was to make people happy, and that brought me to sitting in this chair, sadly. I slowly paint a portrait of myself that's crooked and blurry, but is better than anyone else. I thought that I'd be happy living life as a clown. Little did I know it's harder than it sounds. Something so scary to more than a few. At first I didn't know why, but now I have a clue. How can someone be smiling and cheerful all the time? I now know what goes on inside of a clown's mind. Always performing and trying to come up with new jokes. What happens when they hear, "That's all, folks"? They leave with no care of what happens to you next. But at the next show, I can already tell you what they'll expect. They want to laugh and cheer and see you do silly things, not caring about a clown's tear and the lonely song he sings. Why would they? It's all part of the show. Even his tears are painted on. Didn't you know? The clown doesn't cry, worry, or ever get depressed. He's never heartbroken or looks like he needs more rest. I know my job and they say I do it well. Never off the mark, and when I am, you couldn't tell. They say, "Oh, don't worry, he has something up his sleeve." And who am I to disappoint? I aim to please. So I play the part until the end of the day, but then that's the only start of my day. So here I am, sitting alone, trying to come up with new material. They say life's one big joke, so why be so serial? Wait, what am I saying? I meant serious. Wow, great. Now I'm sounding delirious. Scratch that joke and put it with the rest. I played my part, but still not my best. I still can't find that one joke that will last, because maybe it's because I don't know what makes a clown laugh. Thank you. It's very interesting how with poetry you can interweave reality with fiction and draw inspiration from different things. So I wrote that just with the thought of the masks that we wear, where we're always expected to perform. Everything's supposed to be always cheery. When somebody asks, "Oh, how's your day going?" "Oh, fine, how about you?" It's just a standard answer. If you say, oh, my day is going terrible, let me tell you. People start getting, I need to like, I wasn't really trying to have a full conversation right now.
That's true.
So it is very interesting how we have this social dynamic of we want to be our authentic selves, but we're subconsciously trained that this is what you need to do. Um, and and sometimes I question that, and I would encourage you to question it as well. Um, I'm, I'm just so in awe of this program. Just the fact that uh, it's reaching out into the community to help with the importance of reading, writing, because one, it helps you just to open doors in terms of libraries and libraries of stories that we can learn from, but then also being able to effectively tell your own story. And like I talked about earlier about getting the curiosity from my dad, it helped me to realize that you should always be a lifelong learner, whether you're in school, out of school, because because I honestly having got my bachelor's, got my master's degree, uh, one, it does help, but at the same time, like there's people that I met in the program that in one field they were brilliant, but in common sense, not so much. And I've met people that have not made it past high school, but have provided some of the best wisdom. And so the story and the experience that we share and that we have is so very important. Not just for you, but to share with others. And not to think down on yourself that you don't have anything to offer just because you don't have degrees. This is based on a conversation that I had with somebody about that. This one's called Who Told You? While walking this jungle that we call Earth, many will try to poke holes in the fabrics of others' self-worth to patchwork their own lives. So I ask, who told you that you were flawed? Who told you that you were lacking something? Who told you that your curls needed to be straight? Was it the ones that don't have them naturally? The same ones who produce products that straighten your hair by weakening it, slowly losing its shine and ability to hold itself together, breaking locks, leaving it brittle, and continuously shedding its former beauty? Who told you that you weren't the right size? As long as you're not so heavy to make light of your health or too frail to stand strong in a storm, you're a walking work of art. Each stretch mark tells a story. The one on your thighs grew from carrying the weight of the world, yet you still stand strong. And what about the ones along your side reminding you of when you first learned to cook for yourselves and others? Who told you that you needed to wrap your frame in designer clothes? It often costs the same to make as the lesser known brands, but with the right seal of approval, I mean logo, companies can charge more. They're often worn by those needing validation by wearing the same things as celebrities. And what is a celebrity? People behaving crazily, and some celebrate it. Why? Because of their freedom to express themselves. Because of that, sometimes I shed a tear. And who told you that men can't cry? Was it the one that say that tears are a sign of weakness? It sometimes takes more strength to let them fall than to bottle them up. Don't let the pressure build up, only for it to flare out of control onto whoever might be too close for comfort, but too far for understanding. I don't understand those hating on my graham cracker caramel complexion. Who told you that your chocolate skin isn't gorgeous? Was it the one who tanned to bridge the gaps between our tones? The same one whose skin isn't as tested as yours? You are full of melanin, looked at by society as possible felons in waiting, when in reality, like a melon in waiting, you're ripe with potential. Who told you that you aren't smart? Was it the ones who have $200,000 receipts? I mean degrees that say that they are. Some have graduated school but still haven't learned their lessons. Who told you that you were less because you've been through more? Don't you know that even diamonds have flaws and are made through almost unbearable pressures? Who dared to tell you that you couldn't make your dreams come true? You'll never know your capacity unless you're willing to test your limits. Learn from mistakes, and not be afraid of the unknown. Who made you ashamed of what you don't have instead of out of the gifts and experiences that you do? Did you eat that fruit that looked good but turned out to be rotten? Has it made you always second guess trying to take a bite of something new? Weren't you created pure, born beautiful, cut from the fabrics of holy origins, essentially set apart by your uniqueness? Who told you that no one cared or would ever love you? Does everyone have the same eye color? Do all grow to be the same height? No matter how overwhelming the majority may seem, people are not all the same. The right ones just haven't found you yet. Just don't hide or stay silent when they come looking for you. Nice. Thank you so much. Yeah. So with being able to take my stories and craft these books, it's definitely been a very great experience. A lot of people will say, "Oh, like you're just a very gifted writer." It's work. Because even like I'm very proud of the two books that I've published. I would say between them, they have about 140 poems. There's a lot that's left on the the drawing room table. So when it comes to writing, when it comes to poetry, like anything, there are some that have natural talents, but hard work will beat talent every time. Mm-hmm. So I've been writing poetry since 2008. So that's about 16 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, about 16 years. And my first book wasn't published in 2015. So that's a good 7 years of just writing. So like I said, the poems are about 140, but in terms of writing, I try to write just constantly. There were days where I was writing a poem a day, and some of them I'd say are pretty decent. But at the same time, there are quite a few that are like, oh, those will not see the light of day. And just the beauty of writing is they don't have to be. It doesn't have to be polished. So even there's a poem in one of my books called Drafts, and it's really short. It says, I can't tell you how many drafts are addressed to you, and I can't tell you how many times I've second guessed my second guessing. A lot of times people will see the polished, finished product, but they won't see all the things that we went through to get there. Unfortunately, with social media these days, some of our mistakes are on blast. They are out there, and I still consider myself a young man, but I can definitely say my teens and early 20s was not in the social media days, and some of the things that some of the lessons I learned, I'm glad that they aren't exposed to the world. But at the same time, I feel like that's not always the right avenue to take, because there's definitely times where our mistakes can help somebody else. Mm-hmm. There's definitely times where because people see the polished versions of us, as writers, as expressors of words and feelings, there's times where we can, for lack of a better term, use our gifts for evil. In terms of songs, the diss tracks. There's times where we can really paint people in a very negative light, and people will only hear the one side of the story because I have a platform. Uh, and so one of the poems that I want to read is called Conscientious. This is a poem that I enjoy reading because it's more for myself than anyone else. Especially as I started letting people read my poems and hear them. I try to read this poem every so often just for myself, as a reminder to one, not to put anyone down in my poems or yeah. So this one's called Conscientious. Dear friend, please be responsible with your words. Please be responsible for your words. Though you sometimes use could've, should've, would've beens to patchwork tattered memories, be careful choosing the shades used to paint your inspiration. You'll say that they'll never see or hear it once it's finished, yet put it on full display. Yet you tell me not to worry because it's framed in a way that'll hide identities. But what if they do too? What if they do recognize all your familiar tendencies? Would they be proud to be your muse, your inspiration? Would it make them see the error of their ways, in any ways to become a better person? Or would it make things worse? Does your portrait embody them as they are or as they were? Does it tear them down to the levels that you so painfully pulled yourself up from? You might be right. I could be overthinking things. After all, they're only words. But correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't in some instances God himself called the word? Living and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the division of soul and spirit, joint and marrow. Yes, my friend, words can cut deep. We've been hurt so much and it's taken so long to heal that it's no wonder that we're experts at opening old wounds, scribing new scars into flesh and crumbling others' confidence from the inside out. Like Frankenstein, we'll put pieces together, giving life to the wretched. It's hard to look away because we'll package it with just enough lust and disgust that people can't help but to rush to see something memorable. But they will keep their distance to avoid the risk of getting ripped to shreds. So what's your end game? Would you rather be a speaker for the dead and dying or a speaker for the lost? Give voice to those who have lost smiles, lost love, lost relationships, lost a sense of self, lost motivation, or lost hope. Be a beacon for those who become lost in transition, lost in the motion, and lost in the commotion. Do it because you were once lost. And sometimes you still will wander off the path. Leave a guide to growth for yourself and others. Just don't do it at the expense of another. Say what should be said. Invent in a vacuum when your growth will wither those around you. You have a responsibility, not just as a writer, but as a person. Sincerely, your conscience. Thank you. I did say this was going to be interactive, so any questions? Yes.
How much you want for that book you just read from?
It's $15.
Okay, I want that one.
Any other questions? Yes.
What brings you your most motivation for you to pick up your pen?
That's a good question. I would have to say trouble, to be honest. A lot of my poetry comes from a place of honestly pain, in the sense of like what got me started writing was heartbreak. So a lot of it is based on trying to work through feelings of what I'm going through or what's going on around me. So it might be love lost or the loss of someone that was close to me. So that's when I find that I'm writing the most as part of the outlet. Something else that's helped with my inspiration is being around other poets, and not just poets, but artists in general. So for quite some time, I was going to an open mic in Oakland, California, weekly, and there was artists that some were there just to, hey, I have a poem that I want to read, and then some that were doing it professionally, and so open mics were their practice venues, and so just getting in that community, we would challenge each other. It's like, hey, this week we're all writing haikus, or this week we're writing poems that are called palindromes, which is a poem that you can read from the first line to the bottom, or the bottom to the top, and it reads exactly the same way. So part of it was the challenge, and then just knowing that there's some. So kind of sidebar. This was advice that someone gave me about a relationship, but it applies to writing and expressing yourself. Sometimes we're in relationships, whether they be friendships, romantic, and they might not last, such as life. But sometimes we're in specific relationships because you build a certain trust with somebody, and there's things that they might need to work on, and people might have told them that they need to work on it, but they don't quite hear it. But because you've built that trust and they know that it's coming from a good place, you being able to share is like, hey, you should probably do this, or probably shouldn't do that, and they might hear it. And so that's another thing that's inspiring me in terms of poetry. There's certain experiences that I've been through, stories that I might be able to tell that can hit somebody like, oh, I needed to hear that. I think about it a lot like sermons or preaching, where sometimes that minister just has that word for you that day, and poetry can do that. And that's something that one of my mentors in poetry shared with me is, don't ever feel bad of like, oh, I'm reading the same poem, like, because it even though it might be old to me, it might be new to somebody else, and it might hit them right in the feels that day, and be like, okay. So yeah. Any other questions?
Well, more so to commend and thank you for what you did today. And you're giving me a different perspective of poetry from a cultural, and there's no accident during this period of time, during this month, you came in. So to sum up what I'm saying, if I had to describe you, which I will go back and tell people, because I would like to find out where you do your poetry and catch people who want to go in that direction.
Sure.
Because that's what I am, a change agent. And I want to help make changes in people's life. But what I heard was Pagliacci meet Malcolm X. That's what I heard. I heard the passion that you had and the consciousness that you dropped. That's how I meant that.
No,
Please, that is a compliment.
No, it's definitely well received, and that it's something that when Polo invited me, I was like, I'm here, because Richmond has poured so much into me. Like, this is where my grandma and grandpa lived for many years, where my mom grew up, and going to Southside Church of Christ all my life. Like, Richmond has poured so much into me in my personal growth, but then also career-wise. I was talking to a vet about my first career job was Mechanics Bank, Richmond, California. So Richmond has poured so much into me that, like the scripture said, to whom much is given, much is due. So it's poured so much into me, like, how could I not? So I just appreciate the opportunity to be here.